Good evening. It's Monday, August 2nd, 2021, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's Columbus, Wisconsin City Council meeting. City Clerk Pat Gable will now take the roll.
Albright. Here. Arnold.
Here.
Gray.
Present.
McCabe.
Here.
Modip.
Present.
Piperone.
Here.
Reed. Here. All present.
So if you are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight's meeting has been noticed in accordance with state statutes and local ordinances. And now I'm looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Alder Gray will second.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve tonight's agenda. All those in favor, any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. Moving on to correspondence and communications, we have a few people who have signed up to speak tonight. If the first one is Ron Curtis, so would you please, when you go to the podium, tell us your name, and I already told everybody your name, but tell us your address. And don't forget to turn on the microphone. There you go.
There, double hit. Ron Curtis, 100 Brookside Lane, Columbus, Wisconsin. I'm here with some comments on agenda item number 3, which is the stormwater study update, or storm study update. And I'm going to read my comments directly so that I don't get off track. I've taken time before, and I want to try to minimize that. So first of all, I thank the council and the city for the opportunity to speak and for sharing the information that was available. I appreciate your discussion on July 20th with regard to updating the study and then advancing the study tonight for council action. I think that was great in an effort to try to keep it moving. Seemingly, though, there's only consideration of doing both culvert removal and dredging work rather than just one, the culvert removal. My thoughts on this are that much of the task order work is directed to collecting dredging-related information, sediment depth, measurement, sediment sampling, sediment analysis, modeling associated with dredging, etc. Culvert removal is identified as having the most remarkable effect in both the 2011 and 2017 Rupert and Mielke reports. Culvert removal is much less extensive work. Culvert length is much shorter in distance than the dredging distance and doesn't require the extensive sediment sampling, associated disposal considerations, etc. Removing the culvert may in fact reduce or eliminate the need for some or all of the dredging. This is because some natural scouring of sediment can occur once the water is allowed to flow freely. Therefore, culvert removal consideration should receive preference in the model update and for doing the work. I understood Jason Letha, city engineer, to say the county gave an estimate of culvert removal cost, and I believe it was culvert only, that he thought was overly conservative. The task order does look at getting estimates on the work. I think it should be separated so that you can do one or the other rather than the two being tied together. The other measure then, well, first of all, to establish a firm removal cost so the city can move ahead with the work if the bid is favorable, as it sounded like it could be. And then the other measure, dredging, could come later if flooding is still a problem. Jason spoke also of a couple of other distinct matters that I wanted to comment about. He talked about the culvert flow design for the work on Highway 89 affecting, he said removing the park culvert soon is a concern because then water would flow more freely downstream, potentially worsening downstream flooding. He said the lower park is currently a floodwater staging area, a detention basin in other words. He said the work could be done at the same time the culvert removal is done Work could be done at the same time that culvert removal is done to engineer and install a structure so that the lower park area is a continuing permanent floodwater staging area, if that's what the city wants. Now or in the future, that would then lessen downstream flooding. A structure of this sort could be similar to the current upstream culvert and berm that we're working to try to get removed. We essentially have the same effect, that it would slow down the water downstream. Installing such a structure in the lower area with culvert removal would immediately lessen the Parkview subdivision flooding. And then the last thing I would add is that when the memo that he speaks of that would be brought back to the council by September is available, I would like for the council to schedule a listening session where you'd have the opportunity for give and take rather than having to speak before the issue as we currently do, so that you would be able to take some input. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Dennis Weiner, I almost didn't recognize you out of uniform tonight, Chief Weiner.
I was out of the area all day at a memorial service, so I just got back, so that's why I'm not in uniform. Just kind of a deja vu of one of the prior meetings. Reminder that tomorrow is National Night Out at the park from 5:30 to 8. I hope to see everybody there. The weather looks good. We got a lot of food. We had some potentially significant order issues with the food that didn't come in, and my blood pressure went up a little bit starting yesterday, but it is back down. We're good now. Everything is here and everything we have. So there'll be food, lots of door prizes, activities for kids, everything. So we want to see everybody out there. And also, again, I just want to say that the business community here and the individuals that have donated and stepped up to sponsor this have been absolutely amazing. Not one penny of taxpayer dollars is going to fund any portion of this event except for the officers' wages, those that are not on duty. But a good chunk of us will be, and we move some schedules and stuff like that. So we hope to see everybody. It's going to be a great event. Please come. Secondly, again, the crossing guard situation. We think we may have one of the positions filled, so that would leave one position, a morning and an evening crossing, still open. If anyone is interested, please contact Pamela at City Hall or go to the city website for an application. If someone is willing to maybe permanently or even temporarily take maybe just a morning crossing because the afternoon crossing doesn't work for them, or vice versa, we will take someone that even wants to be on the substitute list just for when we really get into a bind. So that recruitment is continuing, and hopefully we can get the positions filled with school coming upon us. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow night.
Thank you, Chief Weiner.
Thank you.
And the activities at the National Night Out in Columbus are free. The food is free,
Absolutely.
is that right?
No one will be asked to pay anything for anything. We are going to have a donation jar up on the counter for the Marine Corps League, who is graciously doing our grilling and our cooking.
Okay.
But other than that, no one will be asked to spend anything for anything that's going on.
Great. Sounds like a good time.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the next person on the list is Max Chu.
I'm so glad they left the mic on this time. Hi, my name is Max Chu. I live at 321 Fairway Drive. 2 items. Stormwater, I didn't realize you had already crafted, so I'm just going to second what he said. And I would just say I did email my alderman on other things that could be done to mitigate for equal to or less than the cost of updating the study, which would not change the principal facts of gravity. So with that, I'm going to move on to my second topic, which is the proposed rezoning for Commercial Lot Center 7. Just wanted to say, hey, I hear about the neighbors talking, and I thought, it'd be awkward if no one said anything, and a shame because, I was raised differently. If you have an opinion and it really counts, you might as well share it. So here we are. And it was just that there was lots of concern that we would be potentially creating an island for just apartment dwellers in a separate part of the city, which would principally change the dynamic of what would happen to the schools later on. And you let it age about a decade. You can envision a different dynamic, one that people purposely move to Columbus to avoid. I think the arguments that it's been done in other cities is not actually one in its own favor. Rather, in this particular context, I'm not so sure, but just wanted you to know what my neighbors have been saying to me, and what my wife and I, who we both were former teachers, me in mostly middle school, and elementary, and her in high school, and we're like, oh man. So just thought we'd share. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to the consent agenda. I'm looking for. It's off. Okay, moving on now to the consent agenda. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a few grammar errors.
Okay,
Always sorry. On the committee of the whole minutes, if we start with number 7, with the sentence that begins with like to, never mind on that one, I'm rereading it, it's coming out wrong. There's a D missing after rezone to multifamily, it should say. And then if we go down to 8B,
where was your missing D?
I skipped that one. It should just be 2. I'm not reading my own writing very well. Yeah. Under 8B, in the sentence that says grant monies, it starts with that, ends with general. It should be generate. And it should be Ellefson stated. And then under number 10 was the incorrect year for the budget. And then in the sentence on 10 that goes to grow the tax base, it should be would, not will. And that's it. I'm sorry.
Okay, now I'm looking for a motion.
Gray moves to approve the consent agenda with changes noted by Alder Motive.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, now we'll move on to new business. The first item is to consider and take action on my appointment to the Senior Center Advisory Board, and that is in your packet. It is Michael Schultz, who at the time of the appointments was not sure that he was going to be able to continue, and since then has decided he will be. So I did not reappoint him, and now I am asking for you to approve my reappointment to Mr. Schultz to the Senior Center Advisory Board for a term expiring in 2023. And so I'm looking for a motion. Or is there any discussion? Or any questions?
Alder Gray will move to reappoint Michael Schultz to the Senior Center Advisory Board.
Reed seconds.
Okay, is there any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And I want to thank Michael Schultz for being willing to sit on one of our advisory boards and commissions. The third item the second item, under new business is to consider and take action on the rezoning request in Columbus Commerce Center, Lot 7. And this is something that we talked about at the Committee of the Whole, and there's been some discussion about this. And does anyone have anything that we they want to add, or any, Matt, would you like to take the floor?
One of the conditions at the last meeting was that the applicant submit a zoning map amendment for Lot 6 as well, and they have done so after the meeting, and it has been noticed in the paper, and it will go to the August 12th Plan Commission. So that was one of the conditions at the last meeting that has been addressed by the applicant.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns about this issue? Any questions for Matt?
I don't have questions, but I have a lot of concerns about this project, and I can't support it tonight, just so you're aware. We really need this housing in Columbus, I agree. I just want to ensure that we have quality housing and housing that's going to be quality for the long term. There's a lot of questions that are still unanswered. It goes with green space, who's going to be managing it, is it going to be on-site, is it going to be distant? We haven't seen any plans, and I also have some real concerns with even the additional lot being potentially rezoned, that still it's an island out in a commercial area, and I just don't feel that's right.
Just to address some of like the green space and final plans, they will be required to submit final plans that will be reviewed. They would be since it would be a permitted use with the rezoning, it would be a staff level review rather than what you see for like a conditional use permit where it'd go through council or plan commission then council for final approval. So some of the things like the final layout, green space versus impervious surface, like those things would have to be further developed. And I would just say that the conceptual plan that was submitted with that, I think would be changed probably fairly. I think there would be a lot of changes to that to meet the zoning code requirements. But I mean, it's until they get the legal ability to actually move forward with a multifamily project, we can't. That review won't happen. So just to clarify on that.
I guess then I'm wondering why we're going to vote on it tonight.
The applicant has petitioned for a zoning map amendment for Lot 6, and it's
Okay.
kind of, at the last meeting, it was moved forward contingent upon the applicant actually submitting an application for Lot 6 as kind of was determined at the cow at 7:20. Sorry.
Okay. But it sounds like, I guess, this is a little new to me, so I'm a little confused. So, bear with me if I'm asking dumb questions. But it sounds like there are going to have to be some other changes made. I mean, we can vote to rezone it to residential, but it sounds like at least one alder has a number of questions about doing that without more information. So, Kyle.
Well, I think if there's any further questions or information you want either the applicant to provide or city staff to provide or evaluate for you, we could always table it. You could table it to pair it more closely with the other application to ensure that goes through ultimately. We could also work to identify any kind of aspects of this. I think one thing that's important to note is once you approve the zoning map amendment, this may be multifamily housing, or it could be a single-family residence, or it could be an assisted living facility. It could be any one of a number of things already allowed either by right or by conditional use in that district. So nothing that they're proposing is locked in. So, I think that's worth considering that whenever you approve this, the level of certainty about what may go there is pretty limited based on, once it's rezoned, they're able to do anything that's permitted in that district.
Thank you for clarifying that. Anyone else? Ian?
Yeah, I still have a lot of reservations about rezoning something to multifamily in just one small pocket. I totally understand wanting to know more about it, but kind of like what Kyle said, we're only looking at zoning. We're not looking at what's going to actually be there. It's more of a handshake agreement of what he intends to put there. We will never have anything solid of what will be there until it's rezoned. But I would like to see more or less rezoned, so I'd be more comfortable tabling it until we have more land getting rezoned to residential, or if more land doesn't come up for rezoning, then I personally wouldn't like to move forward at all.
Mike?
Well, it seems like anybody's concerns will be answered in the future down the road when this comes back to us. I'm comfortable moving this forward tonight as is, as a zoning change.
Okay, anyone else? Trina?
I guess my main feeling is wishing that this has been a possibility for multifamily development in that area 3 years ago when there was the Shopco and the grocery store, and it was just a much more viable area to support residents. It really just feels like it's gone a more commercial route. And at this point, I'm not comfortable giving a tacit approval for likely putting, like 70 units in a small area.
Thank you. Paul?
I also think we should table this for a future date.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to weigh in? Okay.
I agree. I guess I was the only one that didn't make comments, but I agree.
So I'm looking for a motion to table it, if that's what you wish.
Can I just ask a question for clarification purposes?
Sure.
So if this will go to Plan Commission on the 12th, so that means the council council wouldn't approve it till September, the first meeting in September. I think it's the 6th, but don't quote me on that. Would you want this tabled until that meeting so they're approved at the same time? Or how would you want this to go back to the COW? I guess clarification on process. So, thank you.
Do you have a recommendation?
I do not, but just hearing from the council members if they want it basically concurrent with the other rezoning. So the first meeting in September would make the most sense from a timing aspect. I guess Kyle, I see Kyle going for his button.
Yeah, I think there would be benefit in discussing them concurrently. So whenever Lot 6, I think, would be ready to come forward for discussion, probably at the committee of the whole, I think it would make sense to discuss them jointly. And that was sort of the intent behind getting Lot 6 going. So I just think that may make more sense to review them both at the same time, because then you have your kind of totality known of how much area out there would be potentially multifamily. You still won't have certainty on exactly what that use may be, but it would maybe help to view it as a total multi-phase project on multiple parcels.
Thank you. Sarah?
I guess I'd just like to make the motion that we table this and present it again to the committee of the whole.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we table this zoning request. Is there any further discussion? So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to item number 3, which is to consider and take action on task order 202104, Columbus Stormwater Study Update. Pardon me? Oh, where's Jason? Jason.
Good evening, everyone. Before you tonight was the result of our discussions at the last meeting regarding a contract for services to kind of get you some answers. And I think the answers that you're looking for were kind of what kind of impacts would these changes have on the area upstream, and then also what kind of impacts would they have on the area downstream. So we're looking at updating some of the hydraulic modeling as part of this study. And then also some costs. That's kind of the big question is, what would these different alternatives cost? And I think the way I had left it last time was we don't know some of the answers to develop an accurate cost, and that's what we want to give you is an accurate cost so you can make a good decision. The one thing that I did throw in here, and I think Ron had brought it up earlier, was we didn't talk about it, but I proposed that we do some sediment sampling. And the reason why is in order to get an accurate cost, I have to understand what's in the sediment. And we'd be sampling for metals. Now, likely there wouldn't be any, but as part of a permit or disposal plan that we would need, we'd have to come up with what are we dealing with and how do we dispose of that. And that could significantly increase costs for the dredging project if we would by chance find something. Again, I don't suspect we will because upstream is primarily and always has been agricultural, but we just want to make sure, because we'll be required to do that per the DNR's permit requirements anyways. So I thought as long as we're going to take a little closer look at these costs, let's throw that in. It's not a big dollar amount. It'd be nice to get some sampling for that. Then obviously we're going to resurvey some areas just to confirm cross sections. Some of the channel has changed with the removal of the culvert by the deer pen, so we want to go in and do that and then look at some sediment sampling. And then as far as the removal of the culvert itself in Fireman's Park, the 2017 study did a pretty good job of looking at that, but we want to run with the updated model and the 89 culvert improvements just to see what kind of impact that would have. I don't think these two solutions are dependent upon each other. I'm still recommending your best solution is to do both. But I think the study will tell us, does one make sense to precede the other? And again, I think we can get some pretty accurate costs. So I've already reached out to some contractors just to let them know that hopefully if this moves forward, we'll be working with them to get some costs on the pipe removal as well. So I think that's what we have before you tonight. Because of time is the essence with your budgeting session and getting some answers, I had predicted September 1st to have a memo back to you with all this information in, our findings, the results of the modeling, cost estimates updated. So that's what we'd like to deliver back to you. The only thing I may have overpromised was one of my employees yelled at me and said, we may not have the sediment samples back by September 1st, but hopefully if we do it right away and we get those in, we could get them returned back to us. So I would still target for that as our date to deliver the memo. So it could be in your council packet for the September meeting. Any questions on the study or intent of what I understood you guys wanted?
No questions for Jason, it looks like? Okay,
All
thank
right,
you
thank
very
you.
much. Any discussion on this presentation? So I'm looking for a motion. Ian?
Alder Gray will move to approve task order 2021-04, the Columbus Stormwater Study Update.
Reed seconds.
So it has been moved and seconded that we move ahead with task order 2021-04, the Columbus Stormwater Study Update. All those in favor? Please.
Aye.
Oh, should we do a roll call? Sorry. Yep, roll call. Oh, Paul, did you have anything you wanted to? Okay.
Gray,
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye.
Motive,
Aye.
Pifferone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Albright. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. The next item on the agenda is to consider and take action on claims in the amount of $216,195.73.
I will make a motion to approve the claims in the amount read.
I have some discussion before this is approved.
Yes.
This was a little bit higher than normal, so I started reviewing some of the billing. And I know that we're in a tough situation without the financial director, but I would really like some more detail on the billing. It seems like, and I'm sure it's very justified, but Rupert Melke has just a ton of invoices in here, and I'd like to see more detail on what we're approving. Also, we have not seen any budget versus actuals, so it's getting much harder to be able to continue to blindly approve invoices.
Specifically the duplicate level of invoices, there was a group of invoices from the March timeframe that with the transition from one finance director to an interim finance director, we're not really sure where those went, but they did not get processed. So what you're seeing is 2 months worth. That being said, there are a variety of projects in here, and you know it may help to look at kind of the totality of where these projects are and maybe what task order they're operating under. There's some that are more general, but there's others that they've been asked to do over and above the budget, like the urban non-point source grant application. We asked them to do that, but we didn't really budget for it, so that's natural. But I could provide more information at the next meeting, sort of where we are year to date with them, as well as any other tasks they've been asked to do that weren't considered in the budget process, but were added later on.
I would be appreciative of that.
Any further discussion? Okay. Paul, you made a motion, and did someone second it? Okay.
Alder Albright will second that motion.
So it has been moved and seconded to approve the claims in the amount specified, and we'll do a roll call on this. All right.
Gray,
Aye.
McCabe. Aye. Motiv,
Aye.
Pifferone,
Aye.
Reed. Aye. Albright.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, and then the last item on the agenda is the report of our city administrator, and then me.
All right, thank you. Just a few things, a couple important things. The application period for the communication and multimedia coordinator, that closed. We had a lot of interested applicants, so that's encouraging. We're working to screen them because we did have enough that we actually have to sort through and kind of see who are the best candidates for the first round. And we should be able to schedule interviews soon, so that's encouraging. The second thing is, I just mentioned Urban Non-Point Source Planning Grant. Those rankings came out. Unfortunately, we did not qualify for the grant. They funded 14 out of the 37 applications. We ranked number 28, so we were sort of in the bottom quarter. There may be some additional funding coming available if there's some infrastructure deal or infrastructure plan. That really isn't known yet, but to be fair, there is a pretty large gap yet. So if they doubled their funding, we may be potentially in the loop yet for funding. But internally, we'll also be discussing if there's things we can do to score better in the future when we apply for this. So that was something we tried for, but unfortunately it didn't pan out. Finally, some of the state numbers are starting to come out. The preliminary equalized value just came out, and I believe the good news there is that our community has the highest value it's ever had. Our overall value increased more than $13 million to $504 million approximately, which was an overall increase of about 3%. So I think that's encouraging. However, the net new construction was also released, and that news was not very good. The new construction was the lowest it's been since at least 2014, and that's the farthest back I could go. It was just over $1 million, or about 0.2%. So running some quick estimates and looking at the levy limit worksheet, we're looking at, and this is very rough, but the potential of new tax levy revenue of about $7,500. So when you look at a multi-million-dollar budget and benefit costs and employee costs, that's going to certainly cause some challenges. It's early, and I think there's a lot of information yet to come. But we do have to start incorporating that into our thought process about budget priorities and what we do moving forward. So that will be a number that kind of guides us. And so probably important to start thinking about in a limited budget year, how we want to approach that. And we'll have more conversations about that, but wanted to get that information out. And the primary driver of the limited growth really appears that the residential growth is not meeting the same increase as the commercial and manufacturing, because as you know, we don't have very many buildable lots for single family, which is normally one of the huge drivers of property value growth in the net new construction. So that is starting to kind of come to bear a little bit. We had some relief a few weeks back with 6 residential lots kind of being done by CSM, so hopefully those will move quickly. But then we're back in that same situation with a lot of land dedicated for single family but not being used for single family. So that's all I had. Wish it was better news, but the conversation will continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. So last week, I had the opportunity to sit down with Police Chief Dennis Weiner, who I guess had to leave, for a couple hours, and I gained more insight into the issues facing our police department. I think it was very productive. And as Dennis mentioned, our meeting tonight has been rescheduled from our usual Tuesday night meeting so that council members and anybody here who wants can take part in the National Night Out event at Fireman's Park from 5:30 to 8. So I'm certainly going to go, and I hope to see as many of you there who can make it. Last week, I also attended the swearing in for our new fire chief, Scott Hazeltine, and had a chance to chat a little bit with our police and fire commissioners, as well as our outgoing chief, Randy Keene. So I want to congratulate Chief Hazeltine on your new position as our fire chief, and I look forward to sitting down with you too once you get your feet a little more wet as fire chief to hear your thoughts. I want to shout out to both ENERPAC and DPW. 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, ENERPAC developed the park on Warren. Is that right? Was it 2019?
End of 2018, 2019.
Okay. So they developed a park on Warner Street, and they worked to bring playground equipment to this side of town, and there aren't that many parks over on I guess it's the west side of town. So it's been really great to see young families walk down there, enjoy the swings, get a great view of the sunset. And ENERPAC, with assistance from our city's Department of Public Works, they're now working together to provide even more equipment there for kids to play on, and we thank them for making Columbus an enjoyable place to spend time. Our next city council meeting will be on the third Tuesday in August, August 17th, and that's all I've got for tonight. Now, I guess I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Motive will second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Well, good evening, everyone. I have 7:12 on Monday, August 2nd. Want to welcome you all to the Columbus Common Council Committee of the Whole. And with that, Pat, could you please take a roll call for us?
Albright.
Here.
Arnold.
Here.
Gray.
Present.
McCabe. Motiv.
Present.
Piperone.
Here.
Reed. All present.
Thank you. And this meeting was properly noticed. So next up is to approve the agenda. Does anyone have any comments or alterations? The one thing that I have is item number 9. They requested to be moved ahead to item number 6. Does anybody have any comments, concerns, or? All right, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda with or without the,
Okay, we'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the changes made.
I'll second that.
perfect. All those in favor?
Aye.
Awesome. Agenda is approved with the alteration. And then next up, citizen comments. Did you want to start us out, Ron? Perfect, thank you. Gonna be a pro at that mic now.
See, look at that. Okay, my comment for the Committee of the Whole has to do with the stormwater utility. I generally support, Ron Curtis, 100 Brookside Lane. I generally support the stormwater utility concept. However, I don't support the effort and expense of establishing a stormwater utility if the city also pursues the other special assessment process that was discussed at the July 20th meeting. Basically there, the city talked about assessing the property owners through special assessment in the Parkview subdivision for stormwater improvements. I had some comments, and these are the consideration of a special assessment. Seems because the subdivision primarily benefits from the work, it doesn't seem to be right. The comparison on July 20th to sidewalk special assessment isn't an accurate comparison. Sidewalk special assessment is a commonly used and accepted practice in the city and probably in almost every municipal jurisdiction. A better comparison to me is if the city were to do special assessment of property owners along the street for street work done there because those property owners seemingly receive the primary benefit. Both instances, stormwater control and street repair, are municipal functions where there are wide-ranging benefits. Non-flooded streets in the Parkview subdivision provide safety and other general benefits to all users as does the general street work. If special assessment is used for the subject stormwater work, Parkview subdivision, it should be done across the board and started immediately for all other stormwater projects. Special assessment was not done for stormwater improvement work done during the recent Hibbert Street project. But using the same thought process, it could have been, and how about future street work? Shouldn't the city then also apply special assessment for the planned CBDG grant work, which is going to be dredging that improves supposedly property situations for the owners along that stretch of the creek? Finally, if special assessment is now chosen funding mechanism for stormwater work, the city then does not need to undertake the effort and expense of establishing a stormwater utility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron. Let's see, next up, it looks like Max, did you want to speak again as well?
You just said everything.
All right, thank you. Was there anyone else in the room that wanted to speak now? All right, seeing nobody, thank you, Ron. We will move on to item number 5, committee, commissions, and minutes. In our packets, you have the minutes from the HLPC, CWL, and the library. Any questions, comments, concerns? Perfect. Moving right along. Then, next up, we have Mr. Winfield here to talk to, or Kyle was going to start out.
Yes,
about
thank
the
you.
butterfly.
And I'll start off kind of covering some of the meetings that we've had with Winfield in the last week or so, and then Winfield, I think, can come up and add anything that I might have missed, and then would be able to answer any questions kind of about the grand vision for the park. So, again, Winfield did meet with the Public Works Director, the Planning Director, and myself to review the project, and that was, I think, last week, and then he came in again this afternoon for some additional conversation. The meetings were very good. I think we covered a lot of area. But what really came out of the meeting, I think, was that there's several topics that staff really are looking for guidance from the city council based on, how the park is going to be used. So one of the issues is, clarifying in general if the council is comfortable with the improvements like the trails, the tree removal, kayak launch, parking lot, which is maybe different than what we initially did. The other item is clarifying the length of time that this is intended to remain a park. The MOU we have right now mentions a couple things. It mentions about a 10-year time frame where the odds have committed to maintaining the park. They've kind of discussed that was just to put a term on it, but they intend for a longer term. But there's also language in there to terminate this MOU with about 120 days notice. And the way it's worded right now, it basically says for any other use the city has, essentially. In talking with Winfield, he felt like the intent had been if the wastewater plant needed to expand, that would trigger the need for them to move off of that space. So I think a little clarity might be in order as far as, is this intended for any city use to terminate the MOU, or are we locked into only if the wastewater plant needs to move? Would that be in the MOU? I know Winfield would prefer the more limited for the wastewater purposes only. And then clarify what other uses the city might envision in that park. We've had interest recently from the community gardens about they may need to find another space at some point, and would there be space out there for them? There's been some ideas about, should we use this in the winter? Would we be plowing it and maintaining winter access? Winfield has some ideas and some vision of adding some senior exercise stations and kind of in conjunction with what I would call youth play climbing boulders, for lack of a better, more accurate term, and those being grouped kind of together so that the seniors and the youth kind of interact together, and also things as fun as kind of like the beanbag toss area. So I think there's some need to clarify what the city envisions out there, because in talking with Winfield, he feels like there might not be as compatible of a uses of the community gardens and the butterfly garden all in the same space. And I guess I don't know enough about the two different uses to say whether they would be compatible or not, but ultimately it's the city's land, and we would be looking to see what would be wanted and welcomed and what would not be as welcomed there. And then there was some council questions as well related to the staff availability to do the projects and the costs of doing the projects. And when we met, it's sort of a moving target a little bit, because the odds have really said they're willing to do a lot of work on this, but if they're required to do all the work, it's probably going to take a lot longer, either with the manpower or the funds that they would need to raise. And in talking with Jerry, Public Works Director, he's saying, this is a substantial project to excavate the trails and to move all that dirt and stockpile it. Today we learned there might be a different option, but that remains to be seen, if spreading the land sort of in between the trails versus stockpiling it somewhere might work. So I guess those are things to consider, is that it would be a significant project for Public Works. They could do it, and it wouldn't really cost any more money unless you did this on overtime. However, that probably means other projects aren't going to get done, or they're not going to get done at the same time. You're going to have to push things back. And the final question that we had from the council was, what's the need in the change for the MOU? And Winfield might be able to answer it better, but my understanding was to the change in the MOU, actually to the easement agreement between Senview Farms and the city. I believe, was to guarantee access or facilitate access down to the river. And then that would basically accomplish that. There would be some minor costs associated with that as the city now took ownership, not ownership, but responsibility for maintaining the condition of that road section or path section, which wouldn't by itself be a lot of money, but it does change the terms, and it mostly serves, I think, to get people down to the water. I believe that was the intent. So those are the items that I had from the meeting with Winfield, but I think Winfield is probably the most knowledgeable of anybody on this project, so this may be a good time for him to come up and add to my statements and answer any questions.
Awesome, perfect. Thank you, Kyle. And would you like to come up and talk to us? Or, sorry.
There's actually 4 of us here with different expertise. I don't know if you want us all up here or.
Did you have any thing encompassing that you wanted to talk to us, or do you just want to answer questions, the 4 of you?
I think, sorry I missed the last meeting. I think throw your questions at, I haven't done this, so it's on?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Just give me your questions and I'll answer them. If you must have thought of other things in the interim also. I know Trina's been down there. I would say before we get going, I would be available to meet anybody down there as a group or individual to kind of give them a little tour. And just text or call me. Can I just tell you now? It's Winfield, WINFIELD, 608-334-7988. I'm retired, so I'm pretty flexible during the day or night, except after dark. Kyle gave a good summary of the meeting that we had. I don't have a lot to add to what he said, as I can expand on a few points, but I'd rather get your questions out here.
Okay, perfect. Anyone have a question to start off? Go ahead, Mike.
If you could expand on this boulder, young kid, elderly exercise area, beanbags. I'm confused about that whole thing.
That's a brand-new thing that hasn't been approved by the Oddfellows also. It's an evolving thing, but Eileen Ferris, who's here with us also, sent me some information. There's a health insurance provider and a maker of the equipment itself that you can write grants to, and that's what started us thinking. Plus, there's all kinds of seniors that live out in that area. And if you look at studies that have come up, just look at grandparents. They like watching little kids. So the idea was that we would put some exercise equipment geared towards seniors, but can be used by all ages. And off of that, in another area, there would be rocks, big rocks. If you think about what's the park with the baseball diamonds and everything? Kiwanis, is it? Well, there's big rocks, about 4 of them down there by the kids center there. My grandkids climb on those every time we go by. So the idea is static rocks, nice big rocks that they can climb all over on, not get hurt, doesn't make any noise or anything. That's basically where we're looking. And then the other thing would be in a different area. We thought along the road area, can we do something else to improve, get more people into the park, locals into the park? And that was where the beanbag toss came in. If we put 2 setups there, there's room for it. You could have competitions and all kinds of things that could result in that.
Winfield, I have some information on the senior.
Oh, yeah, can we?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. This is Eileen. She lives across the road in the condominiums, and she's been our best volunteer. She's also an expert in identifying plants, and she's worked on a lot of the gardens in Madison, and she's been very helpful. I don't know.
Yeah, come on up,
I don't know the procedures here.
Yeah. So what are we receiving?
This is some information on equipment for seniors. There's also adult fitness equipment. I don't know if anybody's seen that adult fitness park in East Forest. That's another option. It's
Thank you.
Get Kyle for sure. And-
Thank you very much, Eileen. And it looks like most of this would be things that wouldn't necessarily be, have to be completely permanent. And things of that nature, where would you be fundraising the money to get this equipment then, I assume?
There'd be a fundraising. The Oddfellows, we've put in about $3,000 plus a lot of labor so far. That's all Oddfellows money, and we've voted another $4,000 that's sitting there ready to go. And then we've, unsolicited, we got $600 in checks from people, and an experimental GoFundMe page that we put up has pulled in about another $1,000. To us, we don't really want to go out and do a lot of fundraising until we've worked with you people to define where we're headed with this.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. And I think with that, for the council, I think that's more of what we need to determine tonight. Aside from potential future projects, I think those are things that we can work out in the future. But we really need to decide what we want this to be and how we want to move forward. How much money do we want to invest? Do we want to put in more hours and time and money with our DPW? Because like originally this was more of a non-permanent park. This was not something that was supposed to be costing the city money. It was not something that was supposed to be forever necessarily. And the city may need the land in the future for other uses. So what direction does the council want to go? Because, I mean, we can talk about potential paths, different types of, stone and different exercise equipment all day, but we really need to determine what should this park be is the big question.
I would agree with Eddie, and we never looked on it, the Oddfellows, and I think city government never really looked on it as like a 3-year project. That's why if you look at the memorandum of understanding that we have with the city, we said a minimum of 10 years we'd commit to this. It's not a short-term thing. I appreciate it. We need to know from the city are we going to do this, because we don't want to put a lot of people's money into this and then have it not happen, or solicit money and have it not happen. So,
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the handout we gave you last time, if you got this, if you look, we're really focusing on this portion and then the road that is the gravel road. I think that's all we should really be addressing at this point. There could be a future down the road, but that's down the road. This is where we are right now and need to make the decisions about right here.
Right, perfect.
And the only thing I'd like to correct Kyle on is the road, it wasn't to get people down to the water. It was to, when you get to that section along the water, it gets real narrow. So you're working with about 4 feet off the water of grass and trees and stuff. There's no place for a path there. This road would become the path once you make that curve. That would become the path then from there down to that big tree on the end. Are you getting where I'm talking about, or? I could do a show and sorry. Do you understand what I'm trying to get at?
So the existing road?
The existing gravel road, the one that we're talking about taking and modifying the memorandum of understanding with Centerview Farms, that's the road we're talking about. If you, the road would stay a road coming into the park to the parking and all of that. And then once you make that curve in the gravel road, we would recommend that we cut that off and from motorized traffic, except for the city, emergency stuff, obviously. And then that would become the path essentially to the water.
Okay, and Centerview was okay with this?
Centerview is okay with this. They've agreed, it's really not fair to them if we do put a permanent park in, or any park in here, we're dragging all kinds of people through. I mean, they control essentially the use of the road right now under the agreement with the city. And they've been very nice, very flexible.
Perfect, thank you. And Sarah, go ahead.
I think this is a great project. I'm really excited for it. I do have some question though. I would really hate to see all of this money put into this great project and then have it removed right away for
So would we.
whatever reason, I'm sure. So I would like to hear, I guess, a little discussion, whether Kyle, you have more input on it, or just from the council. What would limiting it just to a wastewater expansion do?
Essentially, in the last, since I came here in April of 2020, can't even remember that far back, there have been certain conversations about other uses on portions of that parcel, but I also think you never know. We just don't know what next year is going to bring or what the year after that's going to bring, where suddenly we want it, and it might not have to do with the wastewater treatment plant. It might have to do with something completely different. If you choose to limit it in that way, you just have to own that you could be looking at something that you want to use and you own, but you can't use for what you want to use it for. So I think it just limits you, which may be no big deal, but if I was to protect the city as much as possible, I would say leave it as broad as possible, that we can use it for anything that the city council at the time determines. And I understand from their perspective, putting all that money and time and effort and then having it go away for something that might not be even that valuable in their eyes would be very frustrating to them. So if I were on their side, I would certainly say let's lock it up and make it for one thing only, the expansion. So that's, I think, the difference of the viewpoints.
Right.
I don't think it even has to be expansion. I think any direct use of wastewater treatment. We're not trying to limit wastewater treatment here at all.
And we appreciate that. I personally would think that we need to keep it as any use. That just makes sense. And there have been discussions about other potential uses that we may have to have it for. And hopefully we don't. Hopefully it can stay a garden, and hopefully that's, because I think that's a wonderful use for it. But I'm not comfortable limiting it. So I think in order to get through everything that we need to with this topic, let's start there. What's the council's opinion on limiting it to only wastewater use in the future?
I don't think we should limit it to just wastewater.
Anyone else? Trina?
I like at least noting intention that it's for the probable expansion of wastewater, just to have that officially written down as expectations.
So are you saying you would like to limit it to wastewater?
It wouldn't be a must-be wastewater. It would be more of a probably proposal of wastewater expansion.
Similar, saying the city can retain it for any use. Well, yeah, I suppose
With the intent.
With the intent of wastewater.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Okay. Anybody else? Mary?
Yeah, I was approached after you and I spoke a couple weeks ago. I think Kyle made reference to this too. The community garden, which is now, you know where that's located,
Yes.
right?
It's one of their fans.
Yeah, right. They may need to find a new place to land, and they actually wondered about that particular piece of land. Is that something, I'm trying to envision, they don't use, I don't know how much land they're using now, but it's not a huge chunk. No. Is that something that you think you could coexist with if that were decided to be a good place for them?
I think it destroys a lot of what we're trying to do. They're nice people. It's a nice project. I'm not against that at all. It's just, I think we can bring outside visitors to Columbus just based on this butterfly garden and this little park around it. And I think that anything that detracts from that, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And having people in a garden in that area, It just seems to me that we're trying to jam three things into space that's already essentially a pretty nice park as it is.
So you'd have some reservations about that then?
Absolutely, yes,
Yeah.
yes, I do.
You know, I live right up the street from them, and I can assure you that there are hardly ever a lot of people there.
Oh, I
But,
agree.
And I know they don't use, I think maybe one concern has been pesticides. They don't use any of that kind of thing. I don't know, to me, it kind of seems like they'd work together, but it seems like that might be something we'd have to disagree on.
Well, if you look at how we laid it out, I mean, it's pretty much, it can be a real nice little park based on wildlife and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think it's compatible to jam other things in there. But,
Okay.
you know, if
Yeah.
that's the only way we get it, you know.
And do you think that's a view that most of the people on the committee share, that they'd rather just have it be for the butterfly garden?
Yes.
And what, okay.
Yes. And again, I understand the constraints that the city works under, and how much, do we know how much land they have out there now?
Does anybody know?
I have a plot over there. I can't believe it's an acre.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 14 spots, and they're 14 by 16. I can't, it may be maybe 3/4 of an acre. I guess my only question is, we get water from the water hydrant. Where would the community garden get their containers filled? I mean, I suppose there's a hose out there, or?
No.
I guess there's a fire hydrant across the street, isn't there?
Not that I know of.
So I don't, and just there's usually only 2 or 3 of us over there at a time. You know, there isn't a whole lot of traffic.
No, and I'm not saying that
Yeah.
there is. I'm just saying it just doesn't feel compatible with the way we've laid this out. And the emphasis truly is on wildlife. I mean, we see eagles out there, there's beaver sign out there. I mean, there's a lot of wildlife going on. And then you put the butterfly garden in, and you got a lot of stuff going. So, I don't know.
So I think, so we have a few things that we need to give staff direction on. So I would really like to try to focus on that so we can move forward. There's a lot of ideas that Winfield has for the park in the future, and we can discuss those at length when they're more appropriate. We really need to figure out what the council would like to do. So as far as the first question, sounds like the people that we've heard from so far would like to keep it as basically the city can do with it as they wish in the future, with potentially adding some language. Paul, did you have an opinion?
I want to second that motion right there, or that idea, so that we keep it as broad for the city. We still should be able to make the rules on it.
Perfect. Anyone feel the opposite, that we should limit it to wastewater? Okay, perfect. I think that gives staff some direction that way. The next up, the access road, sounds like that shouldn't really increase much expense to us at all. And if everyone else is in agreement and it works out, I personally think changing that would be acceptable. Does anybody else have an opinion?
Yeah,
Mike?
so I'm comfortable with the city maintaining it for sure, that road. But I'm just wondering, so you don't want to have access around the corner, isn't that where the kayak canoe launch would be, down around the corner, or no?
No.
Okay.
The canoe kayak launch is just before that corner.
Okay, so you could, like, let's say, back up a trailer and drop some
Oh,
canoes
yes.
off or something if you wanted to.
We've kind of are laying it out so people could come in, go like this, and the water's right here. They unload, and then they come back and park.
Yeah, I wanted some clarification on that. So I personally like to have a canoe / kayak launch over there, because we actually canoe, and we put in by the dam, and that's not super convenient at all. So when you're saying that you want to put that access road in there and you want to put that launch, and I did hear something about a parking lot. So what was the intent? You wanted to put make some of the land a parking lot?
No.
Some of the area or whatever?
So that's all,
See,
he's
just
talking
as
about
it's laid out
existing.
here on this.
Oh, okay.
That's what we're talking about, for the parking lot, right down here.
Okay,
See, here's the canoe kayak, right?
okay. Yeah, I looked at that, okay.
Yeah, so council understands that road is already there, the parking area is
Yes.
already there.
Oh,
It's just
okay.
changing who maintains it basically to the city, because currently we don't. So it's a slight added cost. Another thing I want to point out is the canoe kayak area. While I do think that's a great idea, that's not yet fully fleshed out and approved, and that's something that the DNR is going to have to approve. There's lots of things when we get next to a waterway that, so that's not a definite. But I just want to talk about changing the access and who maintains that street. Are we all good with, oh, go ahead, Kyle.
I just wanted to mention that currently, what I've seen is people actually use that extra stretch of road to get their kayak or canoe closer to the river. So once we have a canoe or kayak launch, that won't be necessary, but in the meantime, people do actually go down there. It can be a little bit treacherous with the condition, but having it blocked off at that point until something else happens will require people to, I believe, is it portage your canoe or whatever, down that road for that length.
Okay, perfect. Does anybody have any comments or concerns? So I think that's probably gives you some direction on the access then. Let's see here, what else? The next thing would be Public Works, the time and expense of having them help out with some of the projected projects that you want to do. So I suppose that's kind of the next thing, is how much expense do we want to designate? I hate to put you on the spot, Jerry, but do you have, perhaps you'd be a good person to get some feedback on this from, since that's your department, if you'd like to come up and talk. I'm sorry, I'm sure you're not super prepared for this since I didn't
That's
do
okay.
anything, but.
I've done a little research on it. Good evening. I think the Butterfly Gardens is a wonderful idea. I think maybe incorporating the community gardens is another wonderful idea. Just to go out of the way, I do have reservations on more permanent structures, the gravel paths, and the installation of them. Winfield was kind enough to provide us with some information on linear footage, which I didn't have when I initially went out there. We got about 3,385 linear feet. And just simple mathematics, if we go at minimum depth and minimum width, we're looking at about 670 cubic yards of material just to remove, not including the installation. If we go at maximum depth and maximum width, we're looking a little over 1,000 cubic yards. So just the removal process alone would be about 3 guys ideal, 2 guys hauling, 1 guy in an excavator. You'd be looking at probably 2 to 3 weeks minimum on just the removal process, looking at about 60 to 80 truckloads. We only have tandems down there, so we're limited on weight, we're limited on cubic yardage. And like Kyle so kindly pointed out, that's my concern when we talk about that. So you've got equipment charges, fuel charges, labor charges. I think it's a great project, but the limited resources that we have on DPW and the projects that they have, to take 2-3 guys off of it for 2-3 weeks. The expense there, you know, you're talking labor charges, give or take $10,000, 2-3 weeks. Equipment charges, fuel charges. It's not as small as it looks on paper. That's just the removal. Then there's gravel, and Winfield has offered up the cost of the gravel, and I believe the bedding material to keep weeds down, a liner to set it in place. So, but again, there's labor that it takes to put that down. So, as minimal as it would really affect the process of DPW and their day-to-day operations. They're stretched. Taking 2-3 people, I see 3 people, you know, out of the loop for 3 weeks at a tune of minimum 10 to 15,000. In my opinion, is a little bit of a blow to that process. So if there's other ways, again, Butterfly Gardens, I think, is a wonderful idea, but I just have reservations on the extent of the time and the material process of installing it. So those are rough numbers just based on linear footage. If there's more hard numbers that you guys get, I can formulate something, put down some equipment charges and fuel charges, but just off the top of my head, that's what we're looking at for material, movement, labor charges, and minimum time and material.
Awesome, thank you. That definitely helps out a lot, you know, at least having an idea of what we're looking at.
I know it's real vague, but to me, it's just not as small as it looks on paper.
Right.
It is a little bit bigger project, and that's my concern.
Right. And I mean, aside from cost, I think we are spread so thin in many departments, including DPW. That's a lot of man hours to come out of not doing other projects that are needed. And so, I mean, perhaps there's a less invasive or less labor in, like, I mean, I know before we were planning on having grass paths instead of this evolving into stone and things of that nature. I think, in my opinion, that may be just what we have to stay with until we can find, until perhaps your organization can find a way to do it. I personally don't think it's something that the city can do take on.
I appreciate Jerry, you know, he's new too, so the initial thing that we're going to do was not remove the dirt. We were just going to feather it out, and we were going to hire a contractor to do that. Because of timing, we couldn't get that done. So it was either delay the garden another year or go ahead and plant the garden and try to work it out. Now, I think an easier solution is let's not haul the dirt. Let's feather it out, put it in the planted grass area, and the odd fellows will replant the grass. I mean, there's some areas there that there's a dip where the mowed grass area is now where water collects. I mean, I think we can handle that. And Jerry, I don't know, you don't have to haul dirt if you do that. I mean, you're just pushing it out into the mowed grass area. Does that help you? I mean, you're not hauling dirt.
It probably would help.
Yeah.
And we just have the grading.
Yeah.
And the leveling off, and then there would be concerns about making sure that we didn't create any areas that retain water, little pools around all the paths.
Mhm.
We had drainage swales.
So I think that's a good solution. And the city bought the seeds for the grass. The Odd Fellows planted the grass, and the city's been mowing it, which was all appreciated. I can't speak for the Odd Fellows, but we got a meeting coming up here Wednesday. And I think that we would be willing, if we just feather out the dirt and not haul it away, the Odd Fellows would be willing to replant the grass areas at our cost, you know, all the way around. That would get us going. The other thing, I think, the butterfly garden takes 3-4 years to really get up and going. There's no reason that we have to do this path work this year. It would give, ideally, Jerry and I would meet out there and whoever else, and we'd nail down what we can and can't do and come back to you with a little bit more information. We haven't been able to do that yet, and I think that's a valuable thing that's missing. We've talked sitting at this table, but it's real different when you walk out there and do it. So best of all worlds to me right now would be myself and Jerry and whoever else to meet early this week out there for a half an hour, 45 minutes. Iron some things out and then possibly come back and meet with Kyle again and then come back to you guys.
Okay.
If that, Kyle, you think that works? Or?
Yeah, I think the one goal I want is if there are specific things the council wants to see and specific things the council doesn't want to see, that we know that, or we end up getting in this loop where staff aren't really sure if what's being proposed is something that is supported by the council, and then we're bringing back plans and proposals that, don't really meet expectations. So I'm also a little afraid that if we're not careful, some of these fine details are just going to get missed, and we're going to end up asking the question a year or two down the road, like, when did we ever say the parking lot was moved from that side to that side of the road? And, that's the reality is right now is when that's happening. So I just want to make sure that we're just very clear and that there's no false expectations of anybody on either side, and then hopefully in the future, there won't be any frustration as we move forward.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's been, I mean, a challenge that we've had with the butterfly gardens is, you know, expectations and things working out the way that they should. As far as keeping this moving, because we do have more to get through, big thing is for now, does anyone want to?
I've been waiting a bit.
Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. So I really like the idea of having the gravel path for making it more accessible to those with a little bit of physical limitations. However, I don't want to start with the gravel path. I'd be much more comfortable with looking into it in another year or two after having the plantings come up more and also seeing how the mowed areas are functioning. We might want to have a different shape of the path after trying to use it for a bit.
I personally agree with Trina. I think staying with the mode path for now is the best and most cost-effective option. I think in the future, as things come back together, maybe looking at a gravel path and things would be prudent. But I think for now, devoting staff time and money, it's just not something that we have, and I don't think it's the best time for it. I think maybe in the future it could work. How's the rest of council feel for that, for staff direction? Okay, so perfect. We're all in agreement there.
Can I just interrupt you?
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. 2 comments. The moving of the parking lot, we've never had the Oddfellows have never put that parking lot any other place than it is now on that diagram. That was the city that moved it across the other way. That wasn't us.
Okay, thank you. Was there anything else for now, Kyle, that staff needed direction on?
No, I think that probably gets us far enough down the road, and then maybe we can bring back something a little bit more detailed for more discussion in a few weeks.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's great. Go ahead, Trina.
I just had one more general question. On the seating of the butterfly area, is the Oddfellows providing that portion of planting?
Did.
You already did?
Mm-hmm. We already planted. We planted it last fall. Just so you know, what we've done, we tried to do this organically. So we had to plow that field 12 times last year during the summer and into the fall. And now we've mowed the butterfly garden 4 or 5 times, and we'll continue to mow it. When the weeds get up a foot, you mow it because in the first year, the butterfly plants don't get up over 6 inches. So we just mow down to 6 inches, and we continue to do that. But it's all planted.
Thank you. I was just wondering, I was checking it out, hoping to see the little baby perennials, and mostly noticed just tons and tons of what appears to be lamb's quarter.
Yep.
Just tons of it.
Eileen goes over there all the time and identifies all the plants. She's got tons of pictures of them.
There's a dozen, I've identified at least a dozen for sure plants.
They're in there.
There are many black-eyed Susans blooming, but you can't see them from the road. That's the only thing that's blooming, but nothing else is mature enough to bloom yet. And as, you know, some of the tops get mowed off when the mowing gets done, but it doesn't really hurt the plant. But I'd be happy to show you the species of plants that I've identified.
And if you want to take a tour, I think she'd be willing to do it with us. Eric Loebner is with the DNR, and he's been doing, through his career, he's planted this kind of stuff. And he kind of walks us back from the edge because you look at it and you say, it's all weeds. We're pretty much right on schedule, I think, both with the switchgrass, which is another, takes 3-4 years to establish itself totally, so.
Not all the plants come up in very year either.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, perfect. I appreciate so much having, all of you here tonight. Anybody else have anything further for now for the Butterfly Gardens? Perfect. Awesome.
Thank you
so
for your time.
much.
Should I turn this off? I don't know how, but.
It's all right. It's all good. Thank you. Okay, let's see here. The next up, Jerry, if you'd like to come up again. Item number, well, it was 6, the awards for bids and crack ceiling. Or Jason, either one of you, whoever wants to take it on.
We arm wrestled back there and I lost, so. So before you tonight, we have actually two items. One would be the crack ceiling and the award for the street repair bids. So they kind of go hand in hand, but I'll take them each independently, and then we can talk about them if you have maybe an overview or a collective question. So this is part of the annual street maintenance program. We have a budget of, I believe, $75,000 in addition to a budget line item for a county aid project for a mill and overlay. And that's not on the agenda tonight, but that is kind of part of the maintenance program here when we consider the total budget. So we met with staff at the beginning of this project and identified our approach. Normally we would do something like crack sealing and maybe a seal coat or a slurry seal for the roadway systems. Every few years what we find is we just have some bad areas of roads that fall apart just due to some extreme weather conditions, bad winters, a lot of freeze-thaw cycles. So we tend to see every few years we have a patch cycle where we're not seal coating, but we're just going in and we're patching areas. Or we can take a road that maybe is reasonably good but has a bad area and we're just going to put a patch in it and fix the bad area. This is the year that we have the patching, so that's the second half of this. So what we did was we split up the budget into two pieces. One would be the crack seal piece, and I believe we estimated the budget, if you look at the letter of recommendation here, to be about $11,776 was our initial estimate. We had 3 bidders: American Paving Solutions, Farner Asphalt, and Thunder Road. They are actually probably only the 3 major contractors that do this type of work. So we were happy we got them to bid, and we got $9,470 low bid for American Pavement Solutions, and then we got $13,000 and change and $20,000. So our estimate was fairly close, and I think we got a really good bid here. So there is, as part of your memo, there is a kind of a summary breakdown in the back of kind of the line item bids. Mine got truncated when I printed it. I don't know if yours did or not, but I'll just run through real quick which roads will be crack sealing this year. So West Avalon, Red Bud Trail, so those are the 2 kind of off of Western. Hamilton Street and Center Street, again, that's kind of down in that same neighborhood. South Birdsey Street, Washington, West Mill, Manning Street, and Hillside Court. So those are all roads that we identified to be rated probably a 7 out of 10, so relatively good, but they're starting to get some cracks. We do a fair amount or extensively crack sealing annually. This year it's a little less, just simply because we didn't have as many candidates out there to crack seal, but we found some. So that's kind of what the project is tonight. So we are asking for approval to move this forward for consideration to award the project.
Perfect. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Everybody comfortable moving forward with the low bid? Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. And then go right ahead for our next one.
All right, so the second piece is the patching piece I had mentioned. We had estimated that we have several alternate bids with this one. So there's a base bid and then 3 alternates. The reason we added the alternates in here is we wanted to capture some costs for future budgeting purposes, so we know what those would cost to repair those areas. Plus, we were hopeful if we got good bids or better bids than we had expected, we might be able to add one of those alternate bids into this year's project. Our estimate was $44,800. We did get 2 bids, Northeast Asphalt and Wolf Paving, again, both very reputable paving contractors. Northeast Asphalt was the low bidder with their base bid at $46,046, so very close to our estimate, and Wolf was substantially higher. So we did not ask Wolf why, but it was very close to what we were estimating our cost to be. So we were pretty pleased with Northeast, and Northeast has done a lot of work in the city of Columbus over the years. The alternate bids, on the other hand, came in quite a bit higher. We had estimated for alternate A $10,000, $368. The bid came in for Northeast at $20,000. Wolf was $29,000. For the second alternate, we estimated $92,000. It came in at $31,000 and $45,000 respectively. And for the last alternate, we estimated at $14,000. It came in at $15,000 and $27,000. So a couple of those were relatively close. There were a couple that were a little off, and so we got to do a little more investigation. But for purposes of what we're asking for tonight is just to approve the base bid. So we're just going to toss out the alternates for now and kind of save those for a later day and maybe revisit those and kind of figure out what happened with those. For purposes of just knowing where the patching is going to occur, again, on the detailed spreadsheet, there is a patch on Fuller Street, just past Dix, north or west of Dix, if you will. We have some approaches on the Lewis Street Bridge that need to be milled off and cut out and repaved. It's pretty rough going across that bridge if you're familiar with it. We have a couple patches that we're looking at doing up on Oak Street near the Spring Street intersection, particularly the dead end. There's a couple residents on there, and that is essentially just gravel. It's deteriorated to the point where I wouldn't even call it asphalt. Black Hawk Drive, Charles Street and Narrow Street intersection. So those would be part of all of the base bid patching. And then the alternates were Tower Drive. We had an additional patch on Tower, Hillside Court, and Commercial Drive respectively. So those are areas that we will not be doing because we're not recommending the alternate bids. The other thing to note on this is the county aid project is Tower Drive, so I'll kind of let everybody know what we're planning on doing and what we applied for the county is to fix Tower Drive from essentially Park Street back to Faith Drive. So that's kind of in front of the gas station and the bank there. And anybody, again, who pays attention knows that that street's really deteriorated over the last year or so. We're going to do a full mill and overlay on that section. Utilities are relatively good, so we're comfortable with going ahead and repairing that so it doesn't deteriorate anymore. We want to reestablish the crown and get water to drain off that. So that is a Towers project. So even though we're not going to accept the alternate bid here, we're still planning to work on Tower Drive to fix that. As far as the total budget, if we take the base bid at 46 and we throw in the approximate 10,000 for crack sealing, it gets us to about 55. We know that there's about an additional 10,000 going into that county aid project that I just mentioned. That gets us to 65. And then the county aid, I believe, was a $10,000 payment for the matching funds, which gets us to 75. I believe our total combined budget between those two line items was 85. So we're a little under. But I promised Jerry I'd give him a little money if he finds something that he needs to repair yet this year, that he has a few funds left. And we talked to staff about the possibility, even if those funds aren't spent, about maybe even carrying that over in the budget cycle so we can reapply those funds going forward as well. So we certainly want to spend those on road maintenance, but I felt comfortable where we were. If we do accept any of the base or alternate pieces of this patching bid, it would put us over the budget. So I think we're kind of either stuck right now with coming in a little under or, kind of going over. And so I think right now we're just kind of recommending keeping a little contingency there, and hopefully there's some other work that needs to be done. So.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Just because this is not my thing, I want to make sure I'm understanding
Absolutely.
it correctly. When you're talking about patching, are you talking about just going in and putting in the loose black?
No.
No, this is actual patching.
Yeah, so what the base patch is the contract requires them to saw cut out a patch. So a lot of these patches might be 50 feet by 15 feet wide, so it's a fairly sizable patch. The contractor will saw cut that out. They will actually excavate out the asphalt and the gravel underneath down a foot, plus the asphalt thickness. So they're going to put gravel back in, and then they're going to put a hot mix or pave, just like a brand new road would look. So that's the patch will be what we call a hot mix, and so it won't just be patching like potholes. So you'll see those patches from time to time, and those generally last a long time, especially if we replace the gravel underneath, because a lot of times those patches will fail because of lack of stone underneath the pavement when somebody paved that 40 years ago. And so by digging that out, it adds a little expense, but it does prolong the longevity of the pavement when we put it back. So.
Thank you. Did anybody else have any questions or thoughts? Perfect. Is everybody comfortable moving forward with the base low bid? Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Next up, review and discuss the stormwater utility. Kyle will be heading that one off.
All right, thank you. Again, just touching on the stormwater utility, that's the utility used to generate revenue to pay for the stormwater improvements and maintenance. The costs are based on the average home impervious surface. I think we touched on that last time. And then sites with more impervious surface than the average home would have multiple units charged to them. So, for example, City Hall might be 10 times the average home, so they would pay typically the base fee and then 10 equivalent runoff units, so that the more runoff you generate, the more you pay. There's a direct correlation between what you pay and the amount of stormwater that sheds off your site. There is a rough outline of an ordinance in the packet. There is another version that has already had some additional staff review that isn't here because we haven't had a chance to kind of take our comments and come back together and discuss them. But we are sort of waiting a little bit of a review and guidance from the committee of the whole. Again, back to the utility concept, the best part from my perspective is that the funds would then be restricted to stormwater expenses versus when we have a difficult revenue year to say, well, you know, we're not having enough general fund revenue come in. We want to do stormwater, but maybe next year. It really locks it in for those purposes. So again, there will be some other steps that we need to do if we want to continue moving forward. One would be the stormwater management plan that we would have to develop. The operating budget would tie in with the fee structure and credit structure, and those are not that difficult once we get our equivalent runoff units figured out. And so there will be some cost for some of that there will be some more staff time, but also probably some engineering time that needs to go in to help us figure out the stormwater management plan. So looking to answer any questions and get guidance on should we continue moving this forward.
Go ahead, Trina.
For first question for the equivalent runoff units, that just counts the size of the footprints for buildings, possibly driveways, because it only counts impervious surfaces, not the total land.
Correct. So what it would do, it would take the impervious surface and it would take a statistically significant sample size of residential properties, not all individually, and that would establish what the average base is, and then it would consider all single-family residences to be equivalent in that regard. Then we would use that number to determine how many multiple units you would charge to those larger sites. Horizontal impervious surface, I think, is what the ordinance, or at least one of the ordinances I had seen. Basically, yes, the footprint.
Kyle, I have a question. Can you give me an example of one that's $3 a month or the slash to 36? I'm just trying to understand. Are we talking about the size of the house, or so? What would be a $36? What type of residence would be $36?
So the range in there of $36 to $60 is reference to the normal or average cost that different utilities charge. So other stormwater utilities that exist in Wisconsin, they're charging somewhere in the range of $36 to $60 for the majority of them. So one might be $36 annually for a single family, and that would apply to all single family in that community if they use that same methodology. Other communities are $60 annually, and the only difference really is the amount of revenue generated, which may or may not be directly tied to the amount of improvements they know they want to accomplish. And so it's really kind of different per community on what makes more sense. Newer communities with more new residential development might go lower because all the developers have already put in stormwater infrastructure and it doesn't need to be maintained at the higher rate yet, so they maybe have less of a need. Older, more mature communities probably have much more legacy infrastructure that costs more. They would probably go to the higher end, needing more revenue generation because all those infrastructure improvements were, the developers, there probably were no developers, and the funding for that would be gone, so.
Right. Thank you. So everybody understands that's just more of a kind of a baseline to look at we possibly might, we don't have specific numbers yet for what ours will be or how much revenue we should, but that'll be part of the process moving forward if we decide to move forward with this. Were there any more questions? Shelley, did you have something else?
No. Oh, sorry.
Anybody else? So what are the thoughts of the council for, or do you want to continue to move forward with the stormwater utility? Hopefully see it get to referendum and voted for? Is everyone? Okay, so sounds like everybody is good to continue moving forward with the process. So just a quick question, what do you think the next stormwater utility update will look like for us?
I would imagine that we will have the additional staff review of the ordinance, so it'll look similar to what you have, but there'll be some tweaks that have been discussed and kind of vetted with staff. Additionally, I think we can probably throw together some examples of fee and credit structures and potentially a task order for the stormwater management plan and what that would actually entail cost-wise if we're going to go down that path.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And when do you think we'll be ready for this to start going out to public, like public information and things?
I think it's important to get the stormwater management plan portion started early and get all the information that we can and get it really finalized and locked in so that we can have a robust public information effort between meetings and mailings and multimedia presentations. So I think that's really the important part. I don't want to necessarily start piecing it out little bits at a time to the public until we have really the full picture, because I think it is really a complete picture, especially when you talk about the fees as well as the credits and appeal process. So,
right, perfect. So, Paul?
Perhaps this is getting ahead of the game, but would there be any calculation on the roof size, because you're taking roof water and putting it onto the impervious, lot area as well, and then will there also be any number or way to decrease or increase like the dollar amount by virtue of what type of material it is for? Is it asphalt? Is it concrete? Is it, because at my job we had to figure out the gallons per minute off of a slope, and there's a different percentage assigned to a different material. So are those to be calculated in there?
Right, and that's something that I think we'll have to discuss moving forward, how we want it to work. In my opinion, there should be credits available for homeowners who put in rain gardens or things of that nature. Different things do have different, are more impervious than others, and size of your home and the size of your driveway, everything should be taken into account. And I mean, I think a credit system for adding in things that could reduce stormwater would be great, because I mean that'd be good for everyone if each individual homeowner is reducing the stress on our stormwater because they're getting a credit back on a stormwater utility. How wonderful is that? So, but if that answers your question. That's stuff we'll decide, but I'm hoping we decide that direction.
Like I said, I knew I was getting ahead of the game, but I just wanted to.
Anybody else? Perfect. I think that gives everybody a good direction on where to go. That's awesome. Thank you, everybody. And next up, let's see here. The disposal of assets request by the DPW. And we have Jerry here. Let's see. Perfect.
He trained me well. Good evening again. Under the disposal of assets plan, the Department of Public Works has accumulated certain equipment that it no longer utilizes, and it's simply in accordance with the asset disposal plan. We've offered that equipment to other city entities to be utilized within. Nobody was interested in it. we're seeking the following equipment that's listed on the attached memorandum there. We have 3 items that have 3 different pieces of equipment, types of equipment that have been identified as not being utilized by the department. And we're just seeking the council's approval to move forward in the disposal of these assets. I don't know if you want me, again, I'm a little new at this, I don't know if you want me to list the actual 3 items here. They should be pictured there. In your memorandum, there's a wing plow setup for a tractor with the underbelly mount attachment. There's some tires, and there's some basketball poles. So the department's utilized these in the past, but they no longer utilize them now. So under the disposal of asset liquidation plan, we're just seeking to move forward with this. We've identified companies outside the process here within the city to advertise and dispose of these.
Awesome, thank you. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Everybody's good? Oh, go ahead, Trina.
Oh, no, I'm feeling quite comfortable for these items. I'm just wondering, does anyone ever purchase a basketball pole with concrete on it?
You'd be surprised, they do.
Really?
Yeah, so.
Okay.
I don't know how it's worked in the past, but really anything you can identify that tax dollars have gone to purchase in the past, if we can find a buyer for those, whether it's within the city or outside, but you'd be surprised what people utilize.
Yeah.
So somebody might just be developing their own little play area, within the community, and they might want to add those, and you drop the whole base rate in there. So it may not sell, but it's worth trying to dispose of them.
Awesome, thank you, Jerry. I think we're all good to move forward with the disposal of assets. Let's see here. Next up, review and discuss the amending ordinance of 98-81. What? Oh, sorry, I skipped over trick-or-treating.
Too scary.
Nice, straightforward one this year. Trick-or-treating, Halloween is on the 31st. It's a Sunday this year. So super, super easy one. Amy Jo is here. Did you have any advice to move it from Sunday or keep it Sunday?
I say keep it Sunday, but that's not my decision, so that's why I'm here.
Awesome.
I have an opinion.
Go ahead.
I would like to see it start at 3 instead of 4. 4 just seems kind of late to me, especially for little kids, and they're going to be eating a lot of candy, and then they're not going to want to have dinner. So, have we ever started it at 3?
It used to be 4 to 8, and we bumped it back an hour, because it does get dark around 8, so.
Is it?
Be fine too?
And it's still daylight saving, right?
Correct.
Okay, good. So that's just my opinion, is that 4 is kind of late, but what do you
Trina?
guys think? Anybody have an opinion on that?
Oh, I like keeping the time. I'm just trying to debate on the Saturday versus Sunday drama. It's traditionally been Saturday, and I just don't know if it's right to have it on Sunday.
Personally, I think since it falls on a Sunday, it works well. And plus, then, if you have other plans for like a Halloween party or something for Saturday, you can do that without it. Like the parents can go to their Halloween party on Saturday and still take their kids trick-or-treating on Sunday without a conflict. I think it's perfect.
It up an hour ahead of time. I don't think there'll be too much of a conflict.
Right. Is anybody else Sunday, Saturday, any strong opinions? All right. No. How about time? Mayor Arnold recommended going to 3.
Fine with pushing it back to 3, but here's the question I have. There's always kids out after 7. Why not just make it till 8 for some of those, tweeners who are still insisting they need to be out there trick-or-treating instead of having them feel like, they're doing something wrong?
I think the time in general is really just a guideline. It's not like the city can say you are only allowed to knock on someone's door between the hours of 3 and 7. It's more of just, when we would advise you to go trick-or-treating. They can go at 2 and maybe get some candy, or they can go at midnight and maybe anger someone. But it's more of us setting the guideline of when we think it should be. Is anybody, the Mayor Arnold thinks 3 to 7. Does anybody else have a strong opinion?
Personally, I think 8 is kind of late, and that's only from a lot of communications that I've had from families in the past. 8 o'clock, most people are shutting their lights off by then.
I run out of candy by then, honestly.
right.
Like,
There's that
it's
too.
insane how much candy you can go through on Halloween. But
It sounds like you need to buy more candy for trick or treating and for the parade.
right. Anybody else? I personally think it's fine to move from 3 to 7, keep it on Sunday. Everybody in accordance, 3 to 7 Sunday?
Sure.
Perfect. Now, with that being done, we'll move to item number 12, amending ordinance 98-81. We have Attorney Johnson here because Chief Weiner was not able to be here.
Good evening. I'd like to congratulate you on the world's fastest Halloween decision. Thank you very much for that. Yes, that is true. This is a relatively simple change in an existing ordinance found within the city code that deals with the parking of very large objects on city streets. And the police department has requested a change made to the ordinance to add the words travel trailer, camper, and motorhome in the third line. And at the same time, I've requested a change to delete a clause in the first part of the ordinance so that we're making it very clear that it applies to all trailers, travel trailers, campers, trucks, anything that's over 30 feet long, period. That is the crux of the proposed change.
Just one little thing. To me, it could maybe be clarified that whether it's 30 feet in total length with the vehicle and trailer combined, or if it's just a 30-foot long trailer.
And right now, well, the interpretation is a 30-foot long trailer, vehicle excluded right now.
Right.
So I can certainly add that to, I can certainly add that if, yeah, I can certainly add that if.
I think it just, without
necessary.
it just leaves some room for interpretation.
Okay, right there.
Trina?
So,
No, I agree with Ian. I would like to see that part clarified. I like that it has the more than 20,000 pounds or exceeding 30 feet. I was looking briefly, and it seems like a typical 40-foot vehicle would be 10,000 pounds, so it's good to have the or. And
so I will add the words excluding the vehicle right after the word length in that fourth line then. And put parentheses around it, and that should take care of it.
Okay, perfect. That sounds good. Anybody else? Yeah. Everybody okay with moving forward with? Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You should have put me first.
All right, next we have the review and discuss electronic agendas.
Just a quick update on where we're at. Pat and myself sat through a presentation from one provider. Very nice. It's one I've worked with in the past. They've added a few updates, simple to use on both the staff side and the council side. So the quote that they provided was about $3,850 a year. We are working with two others to kind of go through what their price and options are. I did list some computer prices in here, which would add some cost potentially, depending on which method you go with. looking just at the paper and printing cost, it's easily $1,700 a year just in the actual per sheet cost that the copier company charges us, in addition to the actual paper supply. I think you probably get at least an equivalent amount of staff time dedicated to that, between the actual using the copy machine and loading the paper, unloading the paper, organizing everything, realizing you made a mistake, redoing all the packets and shuffling those. So really, I think the biggest benefit, there is some cost savings in raw material. I think it's the staff time is where really I think you get your greatest bang for your buck, although sometimes it's the hardest to see. But there is a lot of staff time that goes into developing and organizing and printing these. So just looking to see if there's any questions at this point or anything else. Otherwise, we'll just kind of continue on and present our findings when we have everything compiled.
Awesome.
Do we have to use your computer, or can we do it on our own?
You could use it on your own. That's one of those issues where I feel like if the city has gone to a method of not using paper for the most part, we're sort of obliged then, unless we list it somehow as a condition of being elected, that you have to go buy your own computer. But I think that's the reality, is a lot of people would use their own device if they're not, they're familiar with it, they know how to use it, they know how things work on it. But we would also have that availability for anyone else. So we would plan for the worst and say we could buy up to X number, and we should be aware of that, even if most of you would want to use your own device to start.
If we do use our own advice, Paul, what does that expose us to for open records laws?
It exposes you to potentially having to turn over your device for a search and or a sweep of whatever it is that might be looking for.
So additionally, since this is an online system, this is something that they would have the information within the system itself. There's also records of how many times you access it that's kept in the system that the administrators can look at and see when you downloaded, things like that. If you also did the email system has its own archive system set up, so anything you send or receive, even if you try to delete it on yours, is maintained on the system, I believe. So there's still some risk to your personal device, but if you're using the city-provided systems, like the email system and the agenda system, I think that reduces some of your liability, but doesn't eliminate it.
Right. Shelley, your mic?
Well, I just had a question, but you touched on it. If we get some kind of iPad, we can have our city email on there and do that instead of using our own computers.
Correct. The liability really comes in when you're, say, on Facebook and sending messages back and forth. That's definitely outside of the city system, and those are then likely public records if you're conducting city business, or text messages on your phone. Those are things that create public records, and often we don't think of them in those ways, and it gets problematic when you delete them like you normally would, and then someone wants to see them, and it's, I always delete all these, and we have trouble producing them at that point. So if you're using the city email system, and you're using, if we would go to an agenda system, those are safer alternatives than using private communication methods.
So I have a question. So Paul, I want to make sure I understand this. If I use my personal computer and there's an open records request, can all the other stuff that I have on my computer be accessed in an open records request? Like how many times I play Mahjong, when I'm on my computer, that kind of thing? Or is it only?
No, you have an obligation to turn over the records that would meet the request.
Okay.
So the difficulty is, how do you go about doing that? Because if you can print them off, and say here, okay, perhaps that solves the problem. If somebody says, well, I don't believe you, I think that there's more, now you're getting deeper into the weeds with the review and I can't, there's a word I'm looking for, but it's like a forensic evaluation of your well, that's different, and that's the second part of this. It wouldn't necessarily be you handing it over to the person who's requesting it. You take it to a third party.
Okay.
Special Master, Kyle said, judge.
Okay.
Or, you know, even the first case scenario, and we've had to do this at the city level before, is we hire somebody to
Okay.
go through and grab whatever they can find first. So, yeah, so all of your recipes and things are not, and your Mahjong results are not going to be disclosed.
Okay, that's a
They're only
relief.
looking for certain things.
Okay, and they really are not to be probing into your Facebook page or any of that kind of stuff either?
Well, but, you know, when you say probing, somebody's gonna be looking through your stuff, looking for the records that they're trying to find.
Okay,
So that's the downside of the whole thing.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, they can look through everything, they just only keep what's part of it. Did you have a question, Mike?
Yeah, how's the confidential agenda items? I guess, is this part of would that be separate or part of this too, or what?
No, it is part of it. They have options to publish only the confidential portions just to the certain members who are in the confidential group. So it'd typically be your entire city council, the city attorney, things like that. To be honest, it's one of those, because it's such a delicate situation, we just intentionally in Johnson Creek didn't use the confidential agenda publishing feature, just out of fear of the system having a glitch or sending it to the wrong distribution list or something like that. So we still typically would send things out individually. But, you know, I think with testing and trial, you've gained more confidence. We just didn't want to chance any development deals or anything like that being derailed by an inadvertent click of the mouse. But it is an option.
Perfect. And that was an awesome update. I'm personally excited about going that direction. Does anybody else have any more questions or anything for now? For now, it's still in the beginning plans. We're going to look at more systems and things, so go ahead, Paul.
I think it would help, so we don't have to.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. Saves a lot of staff time, I think, is one of the biggest things. Perfect, so we'll wait to hear more as we go. And then next up is to convene to close session per 19.851G to confer with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. And I'll take a motion. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to convene into closed session.
I can second that.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second to convene closed session. Or do we need a roll call for? Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Albright. Arnold.
Yes.
Gray.
Aye.
McCabe. Motive.
Here.
Piperone.
Aye.
Reed. Motion carries.
Perfect. We are in closed session.